sustained. Your hosts, Karen Klaus and former Bear
Mic's on.
attorney, Nico Jorge.
1200 WOAI. Yes, this is Sidebar. You can find us on social media platforms at sidebartv.com. But you can join us here on WOAI every Saturday from 9 to 10 with former Bexar County DA Nico Jorge, trial lawyer, managing partner of the LaHood Norton Law Group, and also George Araujo, scholar, former chemist, and pharmaceutical researcher and director. I've been very busy this week. And Nico, I noticed that you were nowhere to be found in the text messages that we try to exchange during the week to see what's going on, what current events. Where have you been?
Calling you out.
I am sorry. I have to.
I was in a district court in Guadalupe County.
Oh, okay. You're in trial.
We finished Thursday night.
Can you talk about it? I'm always nosy. You know I love trial cases.
I know you do. No, we secured an acquittal for our client. Thank God. It was a very serious allegation. It was a first-degree felony, and the stakes were very high. I would say very, very, very excellent professionalism on the other side from the government, from Guadalupe County, and that DA's office, as opposed to ours here. But, and then, you know, Jason Goss and I, and Jasmine, our lawyers in our office, tried the case all week, and thank God it worked out for us.
Do you have a celebration ritual?
No.
No?
Just move on to the next case. I mean,
they eat a salad.
Eat a salad.
It's just
a salata.
Well, no, it's people say, how do you deal with the emotion or the stress? Because, I mean, you know, it's high stakes. It's just what we do. You know, I know the severity of it. I mean, I'm out of pocket. George knows. He covered Bible study this week. I mean, I couldn't even go to the men's Bible study because we had to be in court so early, and it was about an hour drive for me to get there every morning. And so it's just what you do. I mean,
it seems like after the trial, you say next.
Well, fortunately and unfortunately, you do that. So I'm just very, very pleased and happy for our client because we believe he was falsely accused, and the jury agreed with us. And so he just gets back to go back to his life after 2 years of being on hold and paused. It's a big deal.
What would have been the consequences had?
He would have been in prison.
Oof.
Five to nine.
Do you remember your first win and your first loss?
Yeah, no. Not really. I mean, I don't look at it that way. I mean, you're
going to see like Leonardo DiCaprio, judge me on my losses because I have none.
He's a liar. Just the fact that he said that means he lost. It's ridiculous. I don't look at them as losing. I look at them as learning opportunities.
When you say prison, how long?
I mean, it depends. You know, in
One
Texas,
day is too much.
Well, in Texas, we have a bifurcated system. So you have guilt, innocence, and if a jury comes back guilty, then you have a second part of the trial, which is punishment. So you put on punishment witnesses or mitigation or whatever you do. And so the range of punishment the jury had, they could not consider probation for this particular allegation. It was going to be anywhere between 5 to 99 or life.
Isn't it funny that we talk about this? I don't know what the accusations were against your client, but I think when I was a wee little reporter, I went and took a tour of the Bexar County Jail, and I was appalled, disgusted, freaked out. I was thinking, is this for animals? This is just my thoughts when I first saw it. And so I think to myself, just 1 minute in there, even on the other side, was too much for me. But when you think about our former president, Trump, and all the things that he's facing, and even 1 second in jail for a man who has lived most of his life as a successful businessman, whose dad and family was the same, it makes me think, wow, would people actually falsely accuse a president of something just to get rid of him as a candidate? And what is the latest? Because there's 1 million things going on with him.
Yeah, I don't care about how he grew up and how he's been successful as a businessman or not. I care about justice. And so I don't care if you're a carpenter or the Pope or the president. If you didn't do anything wrong, you should not be punished. And second part of that is, did the government get there the right way? It's called due process, fundamental fair play. So we have to have rules of engagement in our justice system. I've been complaining about this and sounding the alarms for years on the show, that if we let this tribalism, this side versus side mentality get into our justice system, and let the other side, whatever other side, whether you're Republican, Democrat, going after each other, and use the system as a weapon, then we're in real trouble. And when Lady Justice starts taking off the blindfold or putting on a mesh blindfold instead of wearing a blindfold and not knowing who's in front of her, Lady Justice, that model That statue is modeled after the goddess Themis. Now, I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ as my savior. But all I'm saying is back then it was a polytheistic society, and so they had multiple gods. So the representative of the justice system was the goddess Themis, and she's the goddess of order. A justice system is supposed to bring order to a society, not disorder. And she wears that blindfold for a reason. She doesn't know who's in front of you. She doesn't know your political persuasion. She doesn't know your sexual orientation. She doesn't know if you're, Christian, Islamic, Hindu, Buddhist, agnostic, atheist, whatever. She hears the law. She knows the law because she has her foot on the book. She has a dominance of the law. That means she's got righteousness in her, hopefully. She's crushing a serpent in between her foot and the book. That means she's crushing out evil. Regardless of your religious background, the serpent is a universal symbol of evil. She carries a sword in her right hand, which means that the justice system should be swift at times and should be strong. She wears that blindfold that never comes off, and then she holds the scales in her left hand. She's got to balance it all out, meaning they didn't have the politics and they didn't have the media back then, but she ignores all of that stuff, and she's got to balance out the law and the facts and justice and reach that elusive concept called justice. And this day and age, when we have a mesh in our blindfold, or we pick up the blindfold on the left eye or the right eye and we selectively close it or not, we're in trouble. And this is what's happening. And so regardless of what your opinion of Donald Trump is, you have to look at, and we're going to analyze, I'm sure, today, between what the president's dealing with his immunity and what's going on with the Supreme Court and the rulings, and Jack Smith and the special counsel, Hunter Biden avoiding a subpoena, and have other people done that? And so we hear this soundbite, two-tier justice system. There should be a one-tier justice system, and the pursuit is justice, and you're supposed to passionately pursue it. And the prosecutor's supposed to do that also. In Texas, when I was DA, prosecutors, their oath is to ensure justice is done, not hope justice is done, to ensure it. And that means you don't infringe on a citizen's rights to a trial, to due process, to cross-examination, to effective assistance of counsel. These are inherent. Thomas Jefferson, I always use a quote. I mean, he talks about the jury system is the only thing invented by man to ensure that the government is anchored to the principles of the Constitution. Anchored means secured to. And that's a trial by your peers, of the people, by the people, for the people. I mean, I believe that. I mean, in my spirit, in my soul, in my being. And so when we see this fade away and disintegrate, we're in real trouble. I mean, the justice system is the last beacon of hope in our society. I firmly believe that. And so we need to be very careful.
I think that is a charge that the Trump defense team has brought into every case here, that what you just said here, the notion that the concept of equal justice under the law has been tossed, and the term malicious prosecution has been used in multiple cases. He's got, and it is easy to lose track of all these cases. I mean, there are 4 criminal indictments. There are at least 11 lawsuits. There are some 91 counts. It's conceivable that Trump is found guilty of any one of those, he could end up in prison for a very long time. And so if you really do have to step back and say, what the hell is going on here? I mean, is this truly legit, or is there something else going on? And I think this is something he's brought into every case. He says, no, there's a lot going on here. This is truly malicious prosecution. This is an alternative series of motives that are trumping, no pun intended, the legitimate pursuit of justice. And so, yeah, I think that these things should be examined, but I think the average American voter is probably lost at this point, legitimately.
I would agree.
So, like,
I would
what
totally
trial,
agree.
where, who's the judge, what are the charges? I mean, who's the prosecutor? Blah blah blah. And I think people are confused, and I think that's somewhat deliberate. It's like you want to overwhelm the system. You just feel overwhelmed. You're like, let's just sort of give up here. Let's enter some sort of plea and go along our merry way, which would invariably include dropping out of the race. That's never going to happen, by the way. I mean, Trump has shown more fight, not less, with time. But yeah, I think it bears analysis.
You know how I guess, I don't know which charge it was, but the judge was trying to put a gag order on Trump so that he wouldn't talk about anything. Yet this week we saw almost a press conference with Hunter Biden crying, saying that he was a victim and that he couldn't believe that they were doing this just to hurt his dad.
Well, Nico, if I may, just for clarity, the trial that took the most attention today, at least in the press, or absorbed the most attention, this is the D.C. January 6th trial presided over by Tanya Chutkan with Jack Smith as the prosecutor. there is a gag order that was imposed. Trump appealed it. The appeals court came back and basically confined the parameters of that appeal. So, for instance, hers was seen as overly broad, and the appeals court came back and said it's overly broad, and so Trump can speak out, for instance, against Jack Smith, but he can't bring in his family, he can't bring in staff, and so forth. But there's a gag order in that particular case. I hear the music, so we'll continue this on the other side, but we'll dissect this a little bit further.
Again, that confirms or affirms the mesh blindfold again. And so let's continue this conversation. We have a couple of other topics that we're going to talk about not only during this show, but after. And we will be right back with more on Sidebar.
Somebody made a donation to SidebarTV.com.
Nice, nice.
We want to thank you very much. George, why is it important for us to continue having these conversations? Do you fear that little by little, as we see media going, that there's going to be more efforts to silence, I hate saying conservative talk, but it's just conversation. You know, of course they target conservative talk, but honest conversation, you think as we go, there's going to be more efforts to stop that?
Sure. I think as you have a national government that's increasingly more invested in formally censoring ideas that deviate from a narrative, you have a complicit media that comes alongside and supports that en masse, and then you have at least 2 generations of Americans that are clueless and don't know anything different than a narrative and don't even know their own history. So I think that's a perfect storm, and I think that Sidebar offers an alternative to that. We actually bring in a different way of analyzing things that I would say is unpopular with those 3 factions that I just mentioned. I think that's American. It's moral and necessary. And
there's so many ways you can help us. So if you're on Facebook normally, go to YouTube, like us, subscribe, put a check mark on it. If you're on TikTok, if you don't use TikTok, follow us on TikToks, Facebook, Instagram, and different things. Well, not Instagram. We have George's on there. But you know what's very interesting? I'm sorry for the word. You see how there's a guy analyzing like a sports commentary, the Vivek Ramaswamy interview with the CNN lady.
Oh, he embarrassed her.
He embarrassed her, but there's the guy doing
that's one thing I saw this morning. Someone sent it to me.
Abby Phillip.
Yeah, the guy was doing a sports commentary. Like if somebody's telling the CNN lady something in the ear, shut him up! You gotta shut him up. No, but gone too far.
I didn't see that. I didn't see that, but it seemed that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so blatantly obvious. If that was a court of law, and because juries are very intuitive. If you pick the right jury with the right mindset, and jury selection is really a skill and it's an art almost these days. But it was so obvious to me, and I don't know how long that conversation was. I saw a 3 or 4 minute one that was sent to me, and it was embarrassing. I was embarrassed for her because she looked. It looks weak when you ask a question and then you don't want you ask the question.
Yeah.
Hey, what'd you do yesterday, Salo? Well, I started. Okay. Well, no. What you really did? Well, you asked me what I did, not what you said I did. And so it was. I was embarrassed for her.
Yeah.
I thought Vivek did an excellent job.
He says it's gonna hurt. He says it's gonna hurt. He says this guy commentary. He's saying
he was so calm.
Shut him up. And then he shows CNN the aftermath.
It was really
all
good.
The commentators are saying, well, Vivek Ramaswamy kept interrupting her, right? And then he plays the clip where she says, No, I gotta interrupt you. I'm like, she's the one interrupting.
But see, this is a cornerstone of the left, hypocrisy.
Yeah.
So if they're being hypocritical, that's one of their value systems. So this
being
is
true
the
to
point.
their core.
Yeah, well, they're
And censorship.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that was live censorship. Live.
But he was,
on display.
But he
Couldn't even
showed,
finish a sentence.
He's really he was very calm. He wasn't offensive. Maybe he's seen, so he had to be very calculated. That, to me, I know he's not a Christian, but that was a Matthew 10:16 deal. He was shrewd as a snake and innocent as a dove.
He just waited. He waited right in the middle of it.
But then he just talked. He's like, "You let me finish. I know this is uncomfortable. I know this is going to hurt. It's going to hurt."
It's like a shot of truth, but it's going to hurt you.
Good. It was very good.
It was skillfully done, and there's a lot of really great content.
Yep.
And as I was listening to him, this is actually there should be nothing controversial about what he said. This is widely reported stuff. We've had hearings on this. We have congressional testimony. We have Christopher Wray. This isn't conspiracy stuff.
Yeah.
Her own network
but when
has
you have an
reported on
interviewer
this.
defending and trying to debate, are you asking questions or are you debating me? Which one is it so I can know the parameters?
But she was doing neither, Nico. She didn't want him to even finish.
No, but she was saying, there's nothing. She stopped him and said, there's nothing to establish that. Well, hold on, that's not, you asked me the question. You can present another question to me or debate me. Which one do you want? So but that's just
there's no evidence. There's no evidence. He's presenting evidence. I would have said, well, can I present evidence? I'm trying to present evidence, but there's no evidence.
But saying no evidence is evidence. I mean, so when we made an argument to the jury this week that there was no evidence of this, and this. Well, that's something you consider. You can consider that the fact that there is no evidence.
Well, Nico, for example, in court, when you go to court, right, and the other lawyer is asking a question, you object. Oh, leading, right? So, in other words, they're trying to. How do you say it? When somebody's leading, they're trying to.
What do you mean?
Like the other lawyer asking questions, like I object, leading. Like you're trying to make the other person.
You're putting words into their mouth.
Words in the other person's mouth. But you can object, right?
Yes, you can. You can object. Sure.
Well, how do you? ¿Cómo se dice? Aconsejar. Aconsejar. How do you say aconsejar?
Don't ask Karen. She doesn't speak Spanish.
Aconsejar a alguien. Aconsejar. Give advice to get out of it if there's no objection. For example, like right there, that CNN lady was leading Vivek into saying something. Let's say in court, there's nobody guiding the person, right?
The witness.
The witness. How do they get out of something like that? How do you?
You don't. I mean, you're in court. You're under oath. I mean, so you have your attorney should be objecting appropriately, but you also it's just prepare for your testimony. I mean, when I'm in a situation like that, if you said, do you want me to answer or not? Because if you don't want me to answer, then I don't know why we're doing an interview. Because an interview means you ask questions and somebody gives an answer.
Yeah.
And if you want to have a debate, then let's put timers up. And I've done plenty of debates, you know that, and we'll do a debate. So, but if you're asking me a question, let me answer the question. I know it's going to bother you. I understand it's uncomfortable. I understand someone's probably talking in your ear. But this is the truth, and not because Vivek is saying it, because this is what is established in A, B, C, or D. He didn't say it exactly like that, but I'm just saying I thought he was the part that I saw, he was very well prepared. And look, let's just be fair. That he's a talented discussioner, I guess that's the word. Debater, he needs to work on his, the way he comes across. But he's a very talented interviewer. So is Gavin Newsom. I mean, I call balls and strikes. Yeah. Now, Gavin doesn't have the facts on his side. Vivek many times does. But Gavin has it. He's got it. I mean, he's got that pizzazz. Mm-hmm. But I wish he would use it appropriately. But like I said, he's got the talent. He just doesn't have the facts on his side.
To me, what was astonishing to me is that as I was listening to him talk, I was grieving the fact that we don't have more people doing the same thing inside the Republican Party.
Totally.
I mean, he was very effective. He went
Byron Donalds does it excellent too.
Issue after issue after issue. But there's no press. No one knows about it. And the fact that, hey, Byron Donalds, I mean, this should be in Moss. You should have senators, you have congressmen. Yeah. This is stuff that's been reported. Again, we have congressional testimony. These ought to be important talking points with details. And I would even argue that even Trump should be doing this more effectively. Yeah, I mean, Trump talks in generalities, and he should be whenever he's interviewed, he should be delving into these kinds of details, from the Russian disinformation to federal agents present on January 6th, citing Christopher Wray, who didn't deny that was the case, the Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan, bogus kidnapping deal. So I mean, issue after issue after issue, the 51 intelligence officials who said that the Hunter Biden laptop was bogus when we actually found that it wasn't. And on and on and on. He went issue after issue after issue, and it's part of the public record. Never underestimate the power of being informed. And then you combine that with the fact, like you said, that he's a skilled interlocutor. Okay, he's skilled at debating. Man, I thought it was very effective. And man, we got to keep playing that over and over and over and over.
Yeah. I don't think Trump's capable of doing stuff
No.
like that. I'm not being
No.
mean. I'm just
He's generalities.
He
sells-
very
he sells
marketing,
visions,
he
ideas,
sells-
yeah.
Yes, he's a
good at that.
visionary.
I think he thinks in those terms. He doesn't. I don't think he communicates in
That's
those
true.
terms.
I agree.
I mean,
But
it's
why
not,
would
it's not that
he?
he's
If the American, the average American
Doesn't sell. That doesn't sell.
Yeah,
That
doesn't
sell.
understand that.
That's the disgusting part of it. That doesn't sell.
When you
Being
get
too
into
technical.
details,
I
glazed
agree.
over.
I agree.
Because I'll tell you this, I love that you guys are analyzing Vivek's style, that part of him. It's amazing, but I don't think most people analyze him like that. They don't appreciate him being that smart in those areas.
You've weighed in on his style. I'm really into the content. He really is very good at sandwiching critical content in a short period of time.
Look, let's do a little thought exercise here. So he went up in the polls when he was doing all those interviews and podcasts. He went down in the polls, and maybe I'm wrong. George can correct me because I haven't looked at this and cross-referenced all this other stuff. All I'm saying is, it seems to me he went down in the polls when he started doing more debates.
True.
But I mean, I don't know. I mean, he was moving up. He was moving up in the polls when he was doing every podcast that would have him on because he's a good interviewer.
When he's in legacy media, he goes down.
But not even. I'm not even. I think he still does okay there. He knows how to work in sound bites.
That's okay, but I'm talking about his polls went down.
I don't know. I didn't look at that. I'm just saying the debates, I don't think have helped him. In my opinion, and maybe I'm happy to be wrong, but interviews help him. He's a very good interviewer.
He's remained steady during that time. I think I'm trying to differentiate between polls and press. The press was largely positive in the beginning when he was going around podcast to podcast. You were one of the first people that said, man, he needs to keep doing more of these podcasts. The more he does them, the better. But the polls have pretty much fluctuated around 8 to 10%. In some cases in the early days, and people didn't know who he was, so naturally it was like at 2 to 3. But you see him climb up to about 8 or 10. And the irony is that he's now in DeSantis territory, or DeSantis is in Vivek territory. Just recently I heard some bragging from the Nikki ! People who argue that she's got a real shot in New Hampshire, and that's going to be her claim to fame, just like DeSantis is arguing that Iowa's going to be his claim to fame. I think they're both going to crash and burn in there. All the polls show that. But if you look at the numbers in New Hampshire, for instance, you've got Nikki at about 18. Trump's about 26 points ahead of her. The governor of, is it the governor of New Hampshire? I think it's Sununu. Chris Sununu came out and said, oh, yeah, she's really resonating with the voters, Nico. She's going to do very, very well. She's 26 points behind Trump. Vivek and DeSantis are roughly in the same camp in terms of polls. So I think the press that he's gotten has been significantly less positive as a result of debates. He's being coined as anti-woman, and he's kind of abrasive. He's cocky. I'm sorry, but Chris Christie, I think, effectively branded him, almost like talking to ChatGPT. So I think the press
he
around
handed them stuff over. I mean,
He did.
He gave them stuff to work with.
But
to be
it's
fair.
the press. But the polls actually, he actually seems to be fine. Relative to the others. I don't think the others are that far
I don't
ahead
know
of him.
which interview he goes. When they start fearing you, they start slamming you. So in the beginning, I think, he's just another candidate. But once they start to see what he got, okay, we got
Well,
it.
it's true. Look at Russell Brand.
I was
Look at
thinking
anybody.
exactly that.
They'll even turn on Bill Maher at times.
Yeah.
I mean, but they have to be careful because he's still their guy. I mean, you have to anybody. So it's not that they're trying to quiet conservatives. They'll quiet dissenting conversations.
True.
It's not conservative It's anyone who dissents. They'll turn on you like a pet scorpion, which you don't have a pet scorpion. And so it doesn't matter. It's dissenting. Anyone who would dissent is done. I mean, in their eyes.
Speaking of smeared and speaking of being over the target, getting back to Trump, I mean, he is mired. He's mired in cases right now. And I'd like to get your thoughts on what's happened this week, because I do think it's consequential, Nico. Karen, I think that this isn't going to be confined to the D.C.'s January 6th trial. I think his appeal that presidential immunity is at stake. He's saying, hey, look, this is constitutionally protected free speech. This is malicious prosecution. I was operating within the confines, or what he calls the outer perimeter, of his responsibilities as president. It would have been completely unacceptable. I would have been derelict in my duty as president of the United States if I hadn't spoken out against fraud, or what I believed was clear evidence of illegal activity. I mean, it was incumbent upon me to speak out. Are you kidding me? Not only is this constitutionally protected free speech, but as the president of the United States, I would have been derelict in my duties if I hadn't spoken out. And so I did. And because I did it as the president of the United States, I really should have presidential immunity here.
But now, Go ahead.
She turned that down. She rejected that. And I'm talking about
district
Tanya
judge.
Chutkan, the district judge. Yes.
But see, the president immunity, as you know, George, we've talked about on the show before. There's no statute that covers presidential immunity. It's kind of this theory that goes back to Nixon when he was subpoenaed and sued when he was president. There's not the statute that says you're immune. It's just kind of been, hey, let's just go with the flow. It's been understood, but not really. There's no authority behind it. And so what Smith is doing, the judge, the district court judge, ruled against it. There is no presidential immunity. Well, it's supposed to go to the Court of Appeals. Well, Jack Smith, and I don't know how you...
Well, he did. He appealed to the Court of Appeals.
No, well, he wants to surpass it and go to the Supreme Court because he wants...
No, I'm sorry. Trump appealed to the U.S. Circuit
I know,
Court of Appeals.
and Jack Smith is saying, I'm not going to wait, because that means that we won't have a March trial date.
That's right.
And then how does this not reek of political prosecution or some political influence
But you're not
agenda?
putting words in his mouth. He keeps bringing that
No,
up.
I got it because when the trial was supposed to start in March, which ironically is the primary, and so it smells bad. It looks bad.
Obvious. Manuel Maldonado says, with Donald J. Trump busy with trials, it's almost as if Vivek is speaking Donald Trump's narratives. Thank you, Manuel.
Hey, we are going to take a break right now.
Let's go.
And then we're going to come back and continue this conversation next on Sidebar.
Somebody told me.
Has come back into life in Arujo.
I know.
Somewhere between 1981 and 1983, I think.
My goodness, George.
Or maybe not. Who knows?
What's the matter
Definitely
with
the
you?
early 80s. It is.
George,
the
what
music.
concert would you have loved to gone? Let's say all these 80s music, like, man, I missed this concert.
I really like the Outfield, and I was grieved
That's
to learn
very
a couple
Outfield,
years
but
Tony
wow.
Lewis died. Yeah, I thought they were phenomenal.
Were you a Rush fan?
Not really.
No?
I mean, they were okay.
Barry Manilow?
Definitely.
What?
Definitely.
Barry
He was too
Manilow?
young for him. Adam.
Yeah.
He was too young for him.
Yeah,
Lionel Richie.
Copacabana.
Wow.
and all that. Copacabana and all that.
Carlos Austin Danger, he says the Democrat voters are too dense to even see that CNN is the one who got schooled. Vivek is too smart for reporters to gotcha him.
Yeah, I wish I could confine denseness to Democrat voters. but we
James
just-
Van Cleve says it's
plenty
pretty
of
obvious in what is going on here. It's also obvious that the only way that it will be fixed is if we, the people, fix it. Our government is becoming our enemy. We must regain control or we will become slaves to a tyrannical government.
Well, the only way you fix it is you educate people and get them to vote. That's what you have to
But
get involved
Nico,
in every
I-
crevice.
Well,
Go ahead.
We finished the show last week on that thought, but go ahead, please.
No, I was just saying, I feel like I'm pretty current on what's happening in politics, the world. But I have to say, I'm confused about all of these charges that Trump is facing. And when you said earlier, George, that they all could be connected and affected by this Supreme Court move, I'm confused still. Like, why would they all be connected in one way or
Well,
another?
I mean, if he has presidential immunity, then the cases that
All of them?
they're gone. I mean, yes, and the judge will have to honor that, and so that's why it's a big deal. If he doesn't have presidential immunity, then these prosecutions move forward, and then the trial date stays somewhere near where Jack Smith wants it to
I
be.
think that's right. That's an important point. Let's look briefly at the four claims or the four charges in the DC case. He's been charged with obstructing government, conspiring to obstruct government, defrauding the government, and conspiring to violate the voting rights of Americans. Those are the four charges in that particular case. And so Trump, again, is coming back and saying there was a legitimate claim that I was making, and I wasn't the only one. I mean, let's not forget, we had 18 states' attorneys general who filed a case and went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. Those claims had veracity to them. He argues they were never thoroughly investigated. They were thrown out of court in many cases for procedural reasons, for some standing reasons, but he's arguing that a true analysis of the evidence was never warranted. I'm not going to let up. I haven't let up. I solicited, and he admits this, I solicited state and federal officials to launch investigations. I tried to rally supporters. I even had, as sort of a backup to my lawsuits, I had an alternate state of electors.
You're
which came
speaking
up
by Trump, right?
Yeah. And so that's his case. He firmly believed that this was an issue. He would have been derelict.
What are
in
they
his duty.
saying he did illegal in the sense of doing something that a statute or legislative law didn't allow him to do? What are they saying he did illegal?
because other candidates have done the same
Sure, I
thing.
mean, I think that's the counter argument. What did he do illegal? What's the allegation?
Well, I mean, the obstruction of government. There was
how?
There
That's
was
a general term.
There was a congressional proceeding to
So
look.
he's saying that speech he gave? Or,
That's exactly right, and that he compelled his rioters to riot, that he caused them to riot.
That he
Let's
was the
step
voice.
back and say there's a bunch of stuff. We're just scratching the surface on the January 6th stuff. Of course, there's the Georgia case, which involves him challenging the
Conversation.
2020 election. But let's not forget that there's 8 lawsuits, 14 Capitol police officers, and 12 members of Congress, some prior and present members of Congress. That's an open lawsuit right now, a series of lawsuits, 8 lawsuits that argue that Trump caused physical and emotional harm on January 6th as a result of compelling his supporters to riot. That's right. Those are 8 lawsuits that are open. There's no trial
so then
date on
Schumer
that.
is Schumer in the same boat when he told people that they're going to get justice, going to hold you, Kavanaugh, and all this other stuff, and
that's where this is going to go.
I mean, this
So
is my point. Look, we have to have a system that really gets outside of this political tribalism that we're seeing. I'm going to say that over and over again because this is not justice. I mean, when you have different sets of rules, you have the penal code for Democrats, penal code for Republicans, penal code for whatever, independents. That's not the way our system is set up. We have laws, period, end of story. And that's why I went through that description of Lady Justice at the beginning of the show, because it's important. And that blindfold is critical. I mean, because without the blindfold, all those other things really fall to the side. I mean, that sword gets swiped at only certain people, not anybody. The scales are off balance. I mean, the foot is on the opponent, not on the serpent, right? And the book has selective pages in them. That's why it's important to make sure that ideas of that representation, which is the Lady Justice, it stays intact.
If you said that presidential immunity is not a law, it's just an understanding, what has it been used for in the past? That, he has presidential immunity. Because why do we know that term?
Well, it came from Nixon. I mean, George is more the historian than I am.
Think about the implications. I mean, there's some obvious implications. A president is constantly going to be looking over his shoulder in the course of carrying out his responsibilities as commander-in-chief, as president of the United States, looking over his shoulder. And the second he steps out of office, any prosecutor can just come after him. You're going to undo the power of the presidency.
But the idea of the immunity, George, as you know, was while you're in office, especially.
While you're in office.
I mean, you can't be running a country and the world, essentially, and then dealing with this criminal allegation and this lawsuit.
That's
and this. So it's like, hey, man, while he's president, leave him alone. Right. And they're saying it extended past that.
So what about Biden?
Stuff.
How does that fit
no, this is absolutely going to implicate every president.
Well, like the documents case. I mean, so Biden had all these documents in his garage, but he didn't have a presidential immunity issue,
that's
protections at that time. He was vice president. I mean, so this is where this selective implications.
Why don't they say that they're stepping in it?
That's what under this malicious prosecution banner that Trump has come at. This is malicious prosecution. It's biased prosecution, cherry picking who they're going to go after for political reasons. This is lawfare. And I think anybody who's read or who's stayed up even moderately on this is going to have a tough time pushing back on that rationally. I think he's got a legitimate case to be made. But yes, look, between the trial date for the D.C. case, Nico, is March 4th of 24. You brought up an important point. I don't think we should forget it. On March 5th, we have Super Tuesday. 15 states in the GOP primary. Think about it. Your lead contender for the nomination is mired in a case that starts on March 4th. And on March 5th, you have I mean, nothing better from an optics perspective, from a Democrat's perspective, at least. And so Trump is pushing back and saying, every time Jack Smith and his prosecutors bring this up as an argument, it's always about March 4th. And they're saying, what the hell is so important about March 4th from a legal perspective? Right. And that's why they're saying this is gamesmanship is what they're saying. It's strategic gamesmanship. This has nothing to do with the law. And again, I think the United States Supreme Court, if they look at things as the ways they, in my view, it's going to be tough for them to walk away from it. What do you think? I know it's tough to speculate, but how do you think they're going to look at this? Where do you think they're going to start?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the fact that there's more constitutionally minded justices, I think, is a good thing. I just really pray, and I mean that sincerely, pray that they look at the ramifications of this. This is a big deal. And the ramifications on this country and the future of this country matter on how we handle this whole situation if we get this country back on track. I mean, these ideas that really have gone even past a liberal mindset. I mean, I heard Bill Maher the other day or last week or whatever talking about I'm an old school liberal. I mean, I'm not this woke left. I mean, he consistently calls it out. Now, he will not steer away from his voting Democrat, although the Democrat Party has been hijacked by this progressive ideology and this leftist ideology. And that's what I said when I left the party. And I said, look, it's not about the party left me. I didn't leave the party left me. It's been hijacked. There's been a hijacking of it because you can just look at it. We've talked about on the show many, many times, just the Democrat and what they were advocating just 10 and 15 years ago to today. I mean, they wouldn't be called Democrats today. And the label doesn't mean it. It's the ideas that the label is advocating mean more to me. That's why I say people talk about ideas, not labels and these tribes that we put ourselves into. Because ideas are either good or bad, and there's consequences to them. Look at the Democrats on the border. They have a very different opinion about borders. Look at President Clinton in 95 talking about illegal immigration being the greatest threat to this country. He was a Democrat president. Would he be saying that today? No. Is any Democrat saying that today? No. Is the Democrat president saying that today? No. So what is it? Is it a Democrat-Republican thing or just ideas that have been commandeered by either tribe? And so that's why I really encourage people to change hearts and minds to talk about ideas and why conversation is important and why censorship and canceling and all this crap is really terrible for this country, and it's antithetical to the First Amendment.
Yeah, and I think, again, at the root of Trump pushing back is this idea that the law is being stretched to a breaking point just to accommodate prosecuting a political opponent. And that is where we are. And I think it's going to be tough for the United States Supreme Court not to get into that and I can't wait to hear the pushback that comes back from the justices on this. And I can't imagine that they're not going to bring that up. But yes, you've got a trial date, March 4th of 2024, that is sacred to Jack Smith, and he keeps pushing and pushing. By the way, I don't think there's any chance in hell of that happening because it's now in the appellate system. But even if the appellate system tries to rush it, combine that with the United States Supreme Court, at the very least, there's going to be a delay. And that's why the judge, and I think we were going to get to this, I'm sure, but Tanya Chutkan has paused the trial at the district court level. this is significant. The trial's paused. There's just no chance in hell that the March 4th date is going to be met. You also have the Georgia case, which I think has a date of August 5th of 2024. The Mar-a-Lago case has a date of May 20th of 2024. Everything's sort of sandwiched between the March, May, and August timeframe leading up to the 2024 election. How that's not strategic is beyond me.
I don't know. We're going to have a break in a second, but I have one stupid question that's not related but related. But has anyone ever just ignored a congressional subpoena?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, Holder.
Because
Holder.
I'm just looking at the both sides of everything and seeing how one side is working and the other side is working.
Look, we're going to see on full display now, and we'll talk about this after we get back from break, but you have Navarro and you have Bannon that were prosecuted and convicted for ignoring a subpoena.
Right.
I mean, so it's not about what the subpoena was about, what you were going to talk about. You have Hunter Biden now ignoring his subpoena, and so now Congress has to hold him in contempt. And then, refer that over to the DOJ, and then now Garland's going to have it. I mean, it's going to be on full display on whether there truly is a verdict on whether we have a two-tier justice system.
Is there a legal term for something hitting the fan?
Yes, but I'll be
Okay.
leaked out. But yes.
Okay, we're going to take a break, and we will be right back with more on Sidebar. Tell everybody what they need to do.
SidebarTV.com. Thank you for your support. Thank you for liking. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for commenting. And thank you for telling others about Sidebar, about these needed conversations. And thank you for those people that in the past and last week have supported us through donations. We thank you very much. If you want to if you want to support us, you can do the same thing at SidebarTV.com. Por favor. Gracias.
Thank you. So we're talking about Biden, and now there's, I guess, an impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden, and nobody seems very nervous about these things.
Biden is, and so is the White House press secretary. I mean, so you mentioned about Hunter Biden, about this subpoena. So I'm telling you, this is a big deal, because now I'm curious to see what the DOJ is going to do, because there's no defense. You don't have a defense to it. I mean, Navarro and Bannon at least tried to bring up some executive defense, and Bannon, I believe, was acting on advice of a lawyer, saying you don't have to respond, because Holder didn't respond. Holder, tried to put forward some type of privilege he had because when he was in office at the time with the president at the time, and so they had something. They were actually in their official capacity, and they still were convicted by these juries, but Hunter doesn't have anything to say about it. I mean, so he just defiantly. Now, what I thought was interesting, and I had to look into this because I wasn't aware of this. That did you notice he had his press conference on the Senate side of Congress, not on the House side, because from what I understand, and someone correct me online, or George, you can correct me if you can. The sergeant of arms for the Senate and for the House is like the bailiff. So if you have a subpoena, a bailiff comes out and announces your name. If they see you, they can do something. It's kind of like a writ of attachment. They can get you and say, get your ass in here. You're going to testify. So, but if you went to the House side, the sergeant of arms could have actually taken him into custody and made him go testify. But so that he had his, from what I understand, he had his press conference on the Senate side. So it was a jurisdictional issue, from what I understand. It was interesting.
I admit that's new on me, but it is interesting that this was happening at the same time that he was supposed to be involved in and he blew off the deposition. This is on the 13th, on Wednesday. I was thinking back to the fact, just the hypocrisy that his own dad in October of 2021, when Steve Bannon was being subpoenaed by the so-called J6 Select Committee. That I remember Joe Biden was on a network saying that he absolutely believes that the committee should go after Steve Bannon for blowing off a subpoena. That should never happen. That people should never blow off a subpoena, and that they should be held criminally accountable for that.
What do I always say, George?
This is in October of 2021.
What do I always say, Karen?
Yes.
You made the bed, now sleep in it.
Well, I don't say it that way. Be careful the world you help create, because someday you may have to live in it. This is the world. So this is the rules for you, not for me type deal. That's hypocrisy. But that's a cornerstone of the left. That's my point.
And this was, people can look it up. This is a CNN interview with Caitlin Collins in October of 21.
I heard it just recently.
And he said, I hope that the committee goes after them and that they hold them accountable criminally.
When they did.
So I'm just wondering if that'll apply here. Now, of course, it won't apply. And Hunter Biden, I mean, I don't know if anybody saw the presser. It is pretty painful. By the way, it's the first time I've seen him with clothes on. It was
Stop.
It was nice to see him with it. And on top of that, I seriously, I mean, how many images in the Hunter Biden lap that we see? This guy's walking around in his boxers. And
Pampers.
Or blurred.
I got to a point where when he was wearing boxers, I thought he was overdressed compared to some of the earlier pictures.
Forget about it.
But seriously, I mean, he had a suit on. It really was truly cringeworthy. He had a suit on and he acted like a total victim. This is all MAGA. They're all coming after me. My father was not financially involved, which Jim Jordan quickly pointed out and said, hey, the word financially is a lot more operative than we think. Doesn't mean he wasn't involved. He's just saying that he wasn't perhaps directly paid as a result of the transactions, the Biden family transactions. Look,
there's a lot of money.
There's a ton of evidence, admittedly some circumstantial, but when you add up hard evidence, bank statements, money transfers, 20 shell companies, and the timing of all of this when Biden was in office, and you take the circumstantial stuff. It just occurred to me the other day, Nico, that when Hunter Biden was working for Burisma, making $1 million a year, and he was doing it while Biden in office, and then when Biden left office, that his salary miraculously dropped to $500,000 a year. I just thought that was interesting. That's circumstantial, truly. But when you
who
take all
that Hunter
of these
can
points,
do anything? Who really
no
believes
oil and
that
gas
this fool
experience
can do anything? Did he advise you on anything? This guy is an embarrassment. There's no other way to say it. Now, I believe in redemption. That means he could say, I used to be an embarrassment, but for the grace of God and me turning my life around and me looking at things through the world through a different lens and me being disciplined and me showing consistency. Because, failure and poor choices are events in our lives. They're not. That doesn't have to be who you are. That doesn't have to be your identity. But he doesn't seem to have changed.
No.
I mean, he's arrogant. He's been entitled. He's not capable. He's not a capable man at all. Mm-hmm. I think he's very embarrassing at this time. It doesn't mean he can't turn it around. But I'm just saying, who believes that he's worth $1 million of anything? His paintings suck. He sucks. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I mean, he can spend money.
I hope he's turned his life around. I hope he has a renewed mind. I hope he changes things. It does not appear through the evidence. The fruit of the tree matter, and this fruit sucks.
I could quote Liam Neeson. He does have a particular set of skills, although they tend to be diverse in nature. He's a Yale-trained lawyer and turned adult star. So he's pretty diverse in his skills. I mean, the guy, but to sit there and say that he's the victim, this is everybody else's fault. I mean, you would almost expect this. I mean, this guy is just beyond corrupt.
So
and then you have the White House.
Go ahead.
Sorry, the White House releases a statement adding insult to injury. This is a baseless House Republican impeachment stunt. And then he has the cojones to say that the GOP, instead of going after his son and going after him and actually going forward with an impeachment inquiry, which was a major development this week, finally, the Republicans have united, right? 221 to 212. Truly, every single Republican. Yeah. Biden comes out and says that this is a baseless stunt and that the GOP should instead be focusing on more pressing issues like funding for Ukraine, Israel, and this is my particular favorite, securing the border.
I was just going to
like that?
I was trying to let you finish. That's exactly what he said. The first two, he actually said the Republicans are doing this stunt instead of helping me secure the border. I mean, that is a joke. That is a joke.
It's unbelievable.
Well, I mean, it's have you seen the border even more recently? It's ridiculous. We're the most insecure. The FBI keeps giving us warnings that we're insecure, that things could happen. There's a heightened state. I mean, you're going to warn us. At some point, people need to start believing the FBI and these saying that something's going to happen here. It's absolutely ridiculous. And for Biden to say, help me, that we cannot, it's embarrassing as a country. There's no way we can be the superpower of the world if we cannot secure our borders. That is impossible. You cannot be a superpower and not have secure borders. And so for Biden to tell the world that we can't stop people with backpacks and cell phones that we're going to give a gift card to coming in here. We can't stop them. You're going to stop people with machine guns and tanks and missiles and bombs? How are you going to stop them? All of a sudden, you're going to wake up, you're going to be a Gavin Newsom when Xi Jinping comes in for his little thing, and now you're going to clean up the streets, and you think that people are going to fall for that? Maybe they will. I don't know. But it's embarrassing. I can't even understand why people even take this man seriously.
But dig a little bit deeper, because consider everything we now know. I mean, and we have 3 legitimate congressional committees that have been digging up stuff left and right and have actually produced hard evidence, not just the bank statements, but we have Joe's pseudonyms in 50 emails that shows a connection to financial transactions. We know this. We have this as evidence in the Judiciary Committee, the Ways and Means Committee, and the Oversight Committee. These are legitimate congressional investigations with actual evidence, not the bogus stuff the January 6th so-called Select Committee against Trump was producing, which was nothing. And so Biden, in saying that the GOP ought to be about more pressing issues, including securing a border, when Biden and Mayorkas have let in 7 million people, at least 1.5 million of which we don't even know. These are people that we don't know about, gotaways they call them. This has happened under Biden. For him to say that the GOP ought to be focusing on the border, what's he really doing? He's saying, look, we believe that the people who are listening to us right now are completely stupid. We do. I want to say right now that I believe that the American electorate is nuts, is stupid, is derelict, is foolish, is ignorant. I mean, talk about the lowest possible opinion of people to actually lie with impunity like that and believe that people are on board with you. This is a statement about what they believe about the American electorate, which means this is just the beginning in terms of what they think they're going to be able to get away with. Now, why is that? That's not their fault. That's our fault. He's there in large extent because people have put him there. Yeah, we could talk about cheating, but all the cheating in the world wasn't enough to put him there. How the hell did he get that far to begin with? We have to look at our leaders, and we have to immediately look at ourselves. We got to look at our own mirror. If we don't, we're going to keep doing this, and things are going to get worse and worse.
Well, look
and
how
worse.
bad it's been in 3 years. I mean, this is not a joke. I mean, to think that we could sustain another 4 years of this insanity, I don't know. I'm not saying that to be doom and gloom. I just don't know.
Major cities are already collapsing. It's not like we need to say what's going to happen in the future. It's happening right now.
I make the appeal. We'll talk about this on the after show because I want to take the last couple of minutes to talk about something. But we have to start talking about ideas again and say, look, these ideas aren't working. Every idea of the left has failed. And we can go down and we can argue objectively about it and look at the evidence and present it to the juror, the court of public opinion, and people can make their opinions or whatever in your own personal opinions. But every idea of the left has failed. It just has. And so we have to think, why are we going to double down on bad ideas? Because the results suck. I think people are waking up. I feel like people are waking up. I don't see a lot of pride in Biden. I don't see a lot of pride in some of these ideas. It's more tolerating because of the label and the tribalistic mindset. But we're going to talk about more of these things on the after show for sure, and maybe the Boston mayor and how she's openly just racist against white people, and she didn't invite white people to her quote-unquote holiday party. And that's what I want to talk about at the end. I really want to implore people and encourage people to really be bold about saying Merry Christmas. I've never said Happy Holidays. And when someone says Happy Holidays, I say Merry Christmas back. Whether you're a Christian or not, this is a tradition of this country. I mean, it's a Christmas. Look, if you say Happy Holidays, which we've said for decades, before Thanksgiving, because, hey, Happy Holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, I understand that. But after Thanksgiving, It's Merry Christmas. It's the 2 weeks before Christmas. It's Merry Christmas. No one's going to work on the 25th because of Christmas, not because of a holiday. It's a Christmas holiday, and it's a tradition, and it's a beautiful tradition. Now, me as a Christian, I celebrate not the actual birth on December 25th. We all know historically Jesus wasn't born on the 25th, but still we celebrate the birth of the Savior of the world, and that was something that we understood as a tradition, and so we should continue to do that. It's a beautiful tradition, whether you're a Christian or not. I'm going to tell everyone, I'm going to say it again next weekend because it's going to be before Christmas, but Merry Christmas, guys. Please join us on the after show. We're going to be continuing to talk about some of these issues and a few more for about another 30, 45 minutes. God bless you. Have a wonderful weekend.
So I find out.
George, why are you so sad? Come on.
Because Nico doesn't know who Phil Collins was.
Oh, yeah, I think it's bigger
I know
than
exactly
that.
who he was.
You didn't know the song.
I'm not related to Casey Kasem, so I don't know every damn song.
We can only complain about Biden so much.
I don't know. I don't think there's an end to it.
George,
Yeah,
I am
this
still
stuff is
surprised
allowed.
that the media, of course, people understand this, I hope, that the media has created the mental culture of the United States, right? Because they're repeating the same thing, whatever. But I don't know how much are they able to hide the stupidity of Biden. But because they don't talk about it, they don't say anything, they don't comment on it, but people are looking at it. And you know, when I was telling you some time ago that I don't believe in polls, because when they've called me, asked me stuff, they're like, do you support Trump? I'm like, I didn't answer. I didn't answer. I don't care. So I think that there's a lot of people out there, one, that support Trump and they're not going to tell the polls. And I think there's a lot of Democrats out there that don't support Biden, but they're not going to tell the polls or they're not going to tell anybody. And then you don't hear anything from the media. So I think the United States is very aware that Biden is not there anymore. You know?
No, but that plays out. That actually plays out. I mean, even Democrats, they don't want him to run.
Did you see he did a press conference this week? I don't know if you saw it. Biden,
I
whatever,
did.
first time in, But I'm very curious because I go on there to see what are people commenting. I'm like, maybe I'm in my own bubble and I can't see it. So I logged on to see everybody. I would say 90% of the people that were logging on didn't care. You know how many views he got in the first right after when it ended? How many views do you think? Trump used to get like 100,000.
Yeah.
How many think he got? He got
I don't know.
1,500 views.
Yeek.
The president of the United States.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? Nobody cares. It's anyway.
But because nobody cares, that's what scares me.
Yeah.
Nobody cares that he's in office because we all know it's not him who's running the show. It's, Obama
How can you
or
guys
whoever.
get more views than the president of the United States? How?
Because they're better and smarter.
Isn't that just like what the heck?
I would say yes that this does show up in the polling. We've talked about it in here before. He's dropped like a lead balloon among Black Americans. There's been since his inauguration in January of 21, there's been a 30-point decrease in support from Black Americans.
Ooh, that's huge.
And there's been a shift towards Trump. You also see it with Hispanic. I think Nico could probably talk about this more eloquently than me, but you've seen it with Hispanic support as well. There's been an 11-point shift towards.
Like, you got to be kidding me.
Just saying. I think that people. It's not just that Biden shows a less and less control over his mental faculties. I mean, that's blatantly obvious. Certainly from the way he talks, the way he just sort of blank stares, and then the shifting across a stage. I mean, it's just he's not all there. He's not in control. Love to have dedicate an hour to who we think is in control and why. Setting that aside, but that's a major concern with Americans right now. And then there's the practical stuff. The fact that Karen was stuff that you were bringing up earlier. That the idea that it costs a lot more to do anything today, and truly a lot more, where it's affecting people's ability to live anywhere near comfortably. And so people are connecting the dots, and they're saying we've seen a shift since January of 21, and it's a terrible shift. So yeah, I do believe it's showing up in the polling.
Well, look, I mean, when ideas go to shit, you see the Arizona governor send the National Guard to the border. When I don't know if you guys noticed Fetterman.
Yeah.
He's making more and more sense.
I hate to say it, but
I don't hate to say it. I'm glad to say it. It's making sense. But that guy, I mean, his rehab is really. I mean, he looks more clear-minded.
Night and day.
A night and day. I don't know what they've done to him. And he's speaking. I saw. I didn't watch it.
He says, "Don't call me a progressive. I'm no progressive." He says.
I didn't know that.
What drugs is he on? I want them.
He was on The View and made some good points. I didn't watch it. I just saw the clips on it.
I haven't seen that.
I mean, I love it. I want more of that. I mean, we have to have a bedrock of agreement on certain things, and a border's one of them. Again, single issue voter, man.
On your point of Arizona, Katie Hobbs,
I know,
calling the National Guard, but then demanding of the White House $512 million in assistance. She's not asking; she's demanding $500 million.
But what do you think's happening? Number one, she sees that it's at her front door. Number one, so all this little. These
Let's
theories.
help everybody.
Yeah, these theories, these utopian theories that don't work. She's saying number one, but does she have polling from her citizens? I cannot imagine a governor is not that in tune with their citizens, saying that she has some internal polling. I would not doubt, saying that her citizens are irate and she's going to be done. Not to mention if she wants to live in Arizona, whether she's the governor or not. It's not going to be. It's not. Yeah. So there's self-preservation issues.
If any family in Arizona, she'd be concerned about that. I had to look twice and say, "Did they mean Carrie Lake?"
Yeah.
Oh no, it's Katie Hobbs. Got it. But exactly right. It's here. The issues are
at the front door.
And I've seen your text. You send it once in a while. You'll send a text like that. It's coming.
Yeah,
it's coming. And it's already here. This is the point. The question is, to what extent are people
go to San Pedro.
being affected?
Oh my God!
Go to San Pedro.
Yeah.
Did you go down there?
Anytime, day or night.
Oblate in San Pedro, right there.
I tell a lot of people from San Antonio, just pass by there to get your opinion, because there's a lot of people that have opinions about immigration, and I tell them, just pass by there and tell me how you feel and how do we fix that.
And if you love it so much, go open up a business right next to it. Because the shopping center next to it.
Yeah.
Go open up. Go switch with that CC's Pizza, or go switch with that other place there, or that other one there. Go switch with them and see if you'll take. That's not. Why not? Don't tell me what's good for me and it's not good for you. It's good for all of us.
And now there's like shootings at the HEB, and I mean it's all happening right there. Wonder why?
Yeah.
No, that's it. And getting back to ideas, we closed the show last week quoting Edmund Burke, English philosopher right around the time of the founders, contemporary of the founders. And his stuff is truly profound. I mean, he's channeling the spirit of James Madison in the Federalist Papers, saying that, that we really need to consider that a person's qualification for liberty exists in exact proportion to their ability to put moral chains around their passions. You are qualified for liberty in exact proportion to your disposition to place moral chains around.
What does that mean?
Around
Explain
your
that.
appetites.
What does that mean?
In other words, self-restraint. I want to quote him. I want to give his words don't need to be changed. I shouldn't be changing them, so I won't. But a man is qualified for liberty in exact proportion to his disposition to place moral chains around their appetites. Society cannot exist without a controlling power over the will or the appetite. And then he goes on to say that there either must be a controlling power from within, because the less of it there is from within the individual, then there must be from without the individual. So the less there is in terms of an individual's ability to restrain their own unbridled passions, which he calls fetters. It's an old English word for barriers or enslavement. He says, unless an individual has the ability to do so, then you're going to have some other power from without the individual, meaning the government, to do so. And we're seeing that rapid slide in that direction. And it's very convenient and very deliberate. And And so what's going to stop it? Well, an exact reversal. How do we get back, Nico, to the individual exercising self-restraint and demanding the same damn thing from their elected officials?
Your moral convictions, meaning your definitions of right and wrong. I don't treat my wife and children the way I do because I'm worried about somebody else telling me something. I know I have to answer to God.
Yeah.
It's just my worldview.
That's it.
Why do I believe the way I believe about freedom? Why do I believe the way I believe about free speech and free thought? Why do I believe the way I believe about telling the truth and an honest business, and a handshake means something? I don't need a piece of paper to keep my word. Why do I believe the way I believe about my word and integrity? Why do I believe the way I believe about manners and respect and integrity? Because I do. I mean, it's part of my being. It's just who I am. I don't put it on and off. Why do I believe what I believe about my faith and who Jesus Christ is, and what Christmas really is the celebration of? I mean, I believe it. I think I can defend it objectively, but I believe it intrinsically. I mean, so it matters to me. It's not just logically consistent. It's not just empirically adequate, but it has meaning in my life as well. So that's how you have to. I mean, because you can have the penal code as our moral compass in a society. You can say, don't steal my water, Saulo, or you're going to get in trouble. Doesn't mean you don't want to steal my water.
Yeah, true.
The real test is when no one's around and there's no law and you still don't steal my water.
Yeah.
That's the real test. And that's who you are. That's not what you're forced to do because of external restraints. And that's why Madison, is it Madison or was it? Yeah, I think it's Madison. We talk about if the government was run by angels, we wouldn't need this. And if people, Maya had the quote, I have it in my notes, but Maya used it for a report this week. She got 100 on it. And so she was talking about that people are not inherently good. Mm-hmm. And she got in a discussion with her teacher about it. And he goes, defend that. And so she did. And she used Huck Finn, and she used the Federalist Papers, and she used the quote. Really? And we used scripture. I gave her some scripture about that. Romans 3, all have failed and fallen short of the glory of God. And so, and even though the teacher disagreed with her, he loved it, gave her a perfect score. It was really neat.
Have you been following Bishop Marmari?
Yeah, the guy with the thing on his head.
Did you see the interview with Patrick David?
I didn't see the whole thing, but I've seen his little clip.
I'll send you a clip where this guy is analyzing because he talks about how the church is being too tolerant.
What denomination is he in?
I don't know. But I was listening to...
You know who he is, right?
Is he Coptic Orthodox?
I think that's what it might be.
But the way he was talking about how he talks about the sacrifice of Christ, and he says, if you don't follow certain principles and guidelines, he says, you're disrespecting everything he did on the cross. And he says, and once the church is letting anything go, he says, you're destroying yourself. You're letting yourself be destroyed. And I'm like, what the heck?
Edmund Burke said, it is the eternal constitution of things that men of intemperate minds cannot be free. Again, their passions are their fetters, meaning their prison, their enslavement.
Yeah.
He says that it's built into nature, what Blackstone called the laws of nature and nature's God. It is a law that if you cannot control your mind, if you are subject to your every whim, and this is where we come back to atheists, it's this notion that atheists don't believe there's a God is actually quite false.
They are the God. Yeah.
Their God,
Okay. Yeah.
which means their every whim becomes the standard.
Yeah.
And so that ensues, that absolutely guarantees societal chaos. It is impossible to have that mass atheism without mass totalitarianism. You have to have a structure, an apparatus to restrain the chaos that ensues from the lack of restraints. It's just the way it is. And that's the way, if you look back over the last 100 years in the 20th century, you can clearly see it out. You can play it out. The government has to be in control. And you kill and you incarcerate and you maim and you silence and you disappear as many people as possible to ensure power because you're at the top of the pyramid. And that's it. It's not liberty, it's licentiousness, the pursuit of your every passion, come hell or high water. And that, of course, invariably leads to treading over your neighbor.
But this is the struggle. This is the struggle between the spirit and the flesh.
Yeah.
Scripture talks about it. James 4:4 talks about it. If you're friends with the world, and we'll define what that means, you're in enmity with God. You're at opposition with God. What do you mean, friend? Didn't Jesus so love the world? Well, it matters. Context matters. The world, in definition in James 4, is 1 John 2:16. To love the world, what? The lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life, which is haughtiness, meaning you can't be corrected. So there's no humility in that. There's no redemption. You can't be corrected. You're not going to be saved, because Christ's kindness leads us to redemption, meaning change your direction. And so that's the world, the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, which we want, greed and power and sex and all this other outside of God's design. And then the pride of life, which is haughtiness. Proverbs 6:16 says God hates haughtiness because there's no correction. If you think you have it all figured out, what the hell you need to hear from me for?
Yeah.
You definitely don't hear from quote unquote God. You're God.
But don't you think with what you're talking about, without structure, without there being any realization of good and bad, with people, like your daughter said, like they're not good, they have to have in their mind a way to say, this is going to be the way it is. Doesn't it feel then like we can't avoid violence?
If
what's
it's not
coming,
controlled, that's why the moral compass and the
I know,
government
but
working with those standards.
if people are fighting for our democracy and saying, it's at risk, how can we avoid political violence, physical violence
Get
with
involved.
what's coming?
You have look, because I know people and some people that watch, because I see some of the comments every once in a while, that they want to get there right now. We're not there. We're not there. I understand what the Constitution says. I know what our founding fathers went through. I get it. I get it all. We understand that. We're not there.
And we don't want to.
We
We don't want to
get
be
Who the
there.
hell wants to get there? We have not exhausted every means yet. We've got to vote. We've got to educate people. We've got to get
Absolutely.
past the 33% voting percentage. 33% of this is 33% on average. I mean, it goes up and down. 33%. Let's say 35, just to give us a little bit. 30 to 35% of registered voters vote. Forget about unregistered voters. And we have to, we've got to get there. That sucks. And we have got to let our voice be heard. We've got to make sure we educate people. We've got to not be fearful to engage in conversations of religion and politics. Religion meaning worldview, politics meaning what are you advocating? We have to. That was shitty advice that we were given when we were younger. In public circles, don't talk about religion and politics. Who says that? That's stupid, because the other side doesn't give a shit about that rule, and they're talking about their religion and their politics, their advocacy, and their worldview. And then what's happening? We got people that can't pray voluntarily on a football field, but we have 5-year-olds being forced to walk up and march around during Pride Month. And you don't want to talk about religion and politics? And then the church don't want to talk about religion and politics?
That's exactly right.
I mean, grow some balls and get out there and get into the ring of ideas. We have to.
I'm sorry, there's no way out of this. I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, you can have political violence. That's one way. Nico's right. We're not there. We don't want to be there. And we got to do the hard work of unmaking what's been happening for decades. And that's going to take time. It's going to have to take education. It's going to have to take hard work and discipline. And yeah, I do believe, I don't see a way out of this apart from the nation coming back to the principles in the scripture that forged the nation to begin with. Look, the nation was, the cradle of the country is in Massachusetts, right? Plymouth Colony, Massachusetts Bay Colony in the early 17th century. A couple of weeks ago, there was a poll taken. It was really a citizenship test. And with 60% as a passing grade, anything below that would have been failure. The average grade was 63% of Massachusetts residents on a citizenship test. 63%. So you had a bunch of people that failed and a bunch of people that barely passed, right? That's where you are, because 60 is the minimum. Questions like first president of the United States, was it George Washington or Abraham Lincoln? Don't know.
Wow.
How many branches of government? No idea. How many senators? Who knows? Congressman? Hell if I know, right? And basic constitutional questions, basic Declaration of Independence questions, lost as farts in the wind. You can control people like that. Mm-hmm. It's brilliant, actually. So what's been happening in our national government, again, with the aid of the media and with the fucking ignorance of at least 2 generations of Americans, is a dissolution of America, which was actually built, again, on understanding, knowledge, and virtue. Those 2 pillars, those 2 prongs upon which our national government and really our national prosperity was built.
So would you agree with what the conversation Vivek was, I don't know who he was having it with, talking about that in order for somebody to vote, they had to pass like a civics test or like a government knowledge test? Would you agree with something like that?
Where we are today, I don't have a problem with that. But I don't know that I would formalize that. That's kind of how the system was to begin with.
Yeah,
I mean,
I understand.
people would graduate from high school,
But we're so
and you could, dare I say, read. You could construct an English sentence. You knew American history.
Yeah.
Nico often brings up the idea of the New England primer, right? We'll talk about that a little bit.
You got me one at home. It's at home.
Because that ought to be the standard. I mean, you read the New England primer.
You know what that is? So
No.
then get out of the country.
I know.
Good one, George. I'm just joking.
I'm going back to Mexico.
Yeah, go to Mexico.
It was just a little educational aid that was common in the American educational system, in elementary school, in middle school, and even in high school. And I have a copy of it. I don't know if you have a copy.
I do.
You ought to
I'll bring it
in.
next week. You'll be fascinated by it. When they do the ABCs, A, Abraham,
right.
first father of this. B, the Bible. They actually use the biblical
there's
references.
scriptural notations
Yeah, scriptural
throughout there.
notations. Because of the ideas of the scripture. You don't look in that book and they'll say, accept Christ as your Savior. It doesn't say that. But it has to have some source, some reference of where we're going to get our moral compass from. When you talk about, hey, treat others the way you want to be treated, where are you getting that from, asshole? I mean, you just want to make that just came in from some stork somewhere? I mean, that's an idea that belongs to some worldview, and it's a biblical worldview. Why do we hold that dear to our hearts? Because in God we trust. Because we used to have the 10 Commandments in every school up until 1962. Because as it says in God, which as Mike Johnson was being criticized for referencing his faith, above him, he was standing under in God we trust in the people's house.
How
and then people had the
ironic.
audacity and the stupidity to bust his chops about it. I mean, we just got to get back to what our founding principles are. It doesn't mean you have to follow them, but you should be exposed to them. Period. End of story.
And it makes total rational sense to have built a nation on that, because your alternative would have been things like materialistic processes, evolutionary models that can't offer any hope for moral integrity. You can't. I mean, you simply can't make that argument. You just can't. I mean, for the reasons that we said before, that you're dealing with an individual who places himself above anyone based on self-gratification. And so if you have 7 billion people doing that across the earth, who's going to be right? You can't have competing standards of, you got to have an appellate system. And God's spoken. There are scripture, there are principles, and those are beyond human beings. And so when we're at each other's throats, to what will we appeal to settle the argument?
Sometimes
who's right and who's wrong?
Sometimes I think if what's going on in America right now were a movie, like we would be at like the point where the bad guy is about to be revealed and everything is, everybody's going to know what the plot is and who the bad guy, and we take it away. But the reality is, I just keep on feeling like the bad guy's never going to get revealed, that Biden won't get impeached and that Hunter gets to go free.
Well, he's
and
not
that,
getting impeached. You know that, right?
What?
He's not getting impeached.
I know,
Okay.
but that just kills
They
me.
may vote for it, and it's going to
Yeah.
pass the House, perhaps, but
Yeah.
it's not. It's going to die in the Senate.
I know,
Just-
but
okay.
that's what I'm talking about. Like, it feels like I would love to see this as a movie, but the reality is we're living this, and there is no end where the good guy wins. And I know you've said that before, Nico, where the good guy doesn't always win, but
Well, the good guy always
Don't-
wins in the end.
in the
In
end,
the end, the good guy always
I don't
wins.
want to wait.
But that's
I don't
the
wanna
problem.
wait
That's
either.
the microwave mentality. We don't want to wait. We don't want
You
to
haven't
toil.
watched Idiocracy, the movie?
Who?
Idiocracy?
No.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, speaking of, and
about
this
that.
is a
Exactly
totally,
what she's saying.
totally
Exactly
different
that.
topic, but I don't know if any of you were part of the very first Tucker Carlson live stream on X this week. And it was incredible because it was all audio. He was on, but the people that joined, that had questions were like Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens and Patrick Bet-David. They were listening and able to ask questions of Tucker Carlson. And I was thinking, wow, this really is like a Marvel movie with all the superheroes that have come together. And even he was blown away that they were listening to him live stream. And it made me feel better that, yes, that there are like minds out there, and they hardly ever get together as a superpower to say, this is the truth, please listen. But it made me feel better because, yes, we're part of this group, a tiny little piece of truth telling, But it is easy to get lost in the weeds of what's happening.
I think he's been saying really unsettling things, Nico.
He has.
And
Scary.
As you were talking about that, thank you for bringing that up, because we've been talking about this idea of political violence. We discourage it. I'll speak for myself, although I know you're in agreement. I've been through it. It is life-changing. It is devastating. It is horrendous. Heartbreaking, all of the horrible, worst adjectives you can think. You don't want to go down that road. You simply don't want to go down that road. We have political levers at our disposal that we can pull, that can keep us from going down that road. We keep pushing for education. We keep pushing for courage. That combination of being intellectually competent, having some understanding about who you are as an American, and then having the courage to fight for it and stand up for the Constitution, that's really our solution. We are in this mess because we absconded. We blew those things off. We need to re-embrace them. We don't need to go the route of political violence. But he and Megyn Kelly were having a conversation about that, and she asked him about it. She asked him about the prospect of political violence. Here's what Tucker said. Speaking of violence, that's what you're going to get. And speaking as someone who detests violence, if you leave people no alternative, then what do you think is going to happen? The whole point of electoral democracy is that it's a pressure relief valve.
Yeah.
That's an important concept.
That, yeah.
It's an important metaphor. Really. It's a pressure relief valve that takes people who are very frustrated with the way things are going and gives them a way to express themselves, have their desires heard, and ultimately their will done to be represented in a peaceful way. And if you take that away, which I would argue that's really what's happening here. Nico was just talking about it. Jack Smith keeps bringing up the March 4th date. Who gives a shit, bud? Do you care about, like you always say, I don't care about prosecutions. I care about, or convictions. I care about pursuing what is just.
Right.
What's the ambition of the Department of Justice here? Prosecuting your political opponents. So Tucker continues and says, look, they want to have their desires heard. This is a political, a pressure relief valve, so you don't have to resort to violence. He said, ultimately, people want their will to be done and represented in a peaceful way. And if you take that away, if you have staged an unfair election, which 2020 was, if you suppress information that voters need to make an informed decision, you're rigging the election, and they did that. So if you keep doing that, and people are like, wait, I have no economic power. You've devalued my currency, so it's like $11 for a dozen eggs, and my vote doesn't matter anymore. Well, then what do I have? I can't even vote for my guy because you won't let him run. I'm inserting that because he had added that in a different statement. I can't vote for Donald Trump because it's not like he's going to lose on the ideas. He's going to lose because you won't even let him run. And Tucker says, if my vote doesn't matter anymore, what do I have? What power do I have? You're going to get violence. And if you keep this shit up, that's just the truth. And I'm very upset about that. I don't want it to happen. I think the counter-violence will be much more extreme than the violence. And he's right about that. The government will come down. Martial law is an understatement. The counter-violent move, according to Tucker, I think he's right, will be much more extreme than the violence. But any rational person can see what's coming, so they have to stop this. And I'll stop there. And he goes on and on and on.
And he says, stop this how?
Well, he's already, in that previous speech, he says that you refuse to shut up. You make sure you know what the hell is talking about.
And you keep talking, and you keep look, I'm not an optimist. I'm a realist. I'm an optimist in heaven. I mean, God wins in the end. But I mean, I don't necessarily believe that we're not going to go through some shit. We are. It's self-imposed. But I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged when the Russell Brands of the world, when the Dave Rubins of the world, when the Joe Rogan who admits that it's not crazy to believe in God when he's on podcast talking to people, there's a changing of the mind. When you have people saying that these ideas suck, when you have an Arizona governor saying we need National Guard, that's telling you. When you have Eric Adams, I mean, instead of just shoving his face in the mud, just say, Mayor, what can we do to stop this? Let's help you. Let's bring them along. I don't want to. You saying, I was right. Great, you were right. Now what? What does that do for us? Yeah. Does it stop the border problems? Does it stop the terrorists from coming in? Does it? You don't think? How long do you think it's going to be before someone walks into one of our public meetings and blows it up like they did in Ukraine. You see that video going around?
Yes,
It's horrible.
awful.
I mean, it's horrible. This guy walks in and just there and sits there for a little while. I don't know what they were saying. Drops a couple of things. Everybody's boom, blows up, and then all these people are very badly hurt, maybe dying.
One dead.
One dead already?
And a
Okay.
bunch.
26 injured.
But seriously injured, some of them, you know? I mean, that's horrific. Do you think it's funny until it's your family member around there? I mean, so who wants to be that way? That's why people need to be educated. They need to be informed. They need to be capable. They need to be armed in the sense of trained with it. That's why Second Amendment is so important. Why do you think gun sales are up so much? By everybody, not just by Republicans and conservatives. I mean, it's by even Democrats and people that lean left. They're like, I don't feel safe. Well, why don't you feel safe, Mr. and Mrs. Left-leaner? Because you voted in this dickwad that doesn't want to do anything. I mean, that's why. Because the ideas that these people are pushing
To protect you, because he
aren't
doesn't give
working.
two shits about it, right?
So you wouldn't have to buy as many guns, but now you see the purpose in them, right? Now you know why I want them. But you wouldn't need, if we had someone that understood justice, understood order, understood the blindfold, understood that this is not a me versus you, it's us versus them in the sense of people that are disorderly. We need order in our society so we can go back to disagreeing. I want to disagree with you, and I want you to disagree with you. That'll sharpen my mind and make sure that my position holds true. But we can't disagree if we're both doing this.
Yeah.
You see, I don't know. What'd you say about that? I don't know. I'll talk to you later. Well, fuck, watch out. I mean, I'm being a little bit dramatic, but I'm trying to make my point.
You're as you were saying, I was thinking about your brother Mark. He's going to be running for office.
He is running. He's
running
running
for office,
for state rep, 121.
And he's challenging, as he should, Steve Allison.
Yes.
And Mark had an important event this week, and I called him because I wanted to chat with him, and we talked for a couple minutes, and he says, "Hey, you know, we really got to get back to talking. I'd love to talk theology with you again."
Oh, good.
And I said, "You know what? I love talking. One of the things that I cherish most about my conversations with Mark, I love when we disagree. I look forward to disagreeing."
He's a Christian, by the way.
Oh, yes. No, I didn't mean it that way. I'm just saying we talk philosophy, theology, politics, whatever. And I and I'd say the same thing for Nico. I cherish those disagreements. I do, because I get better.
Yeah, I get what
I mean,
you're
I just
saying.
get better. I think
get
more.
it.
I think more clearly. Even if I don't think more clearly, I get better at articulating things more clearly. Right? It's professor in high school said to me, I don't know where he got the quote. I never had the curiosity to look it up. Maybe I should. He who wrestles with us strengthens our nerve and sharpens our skill. Our antagonist is our helper.
Yep.
And I feel very much that way. And I remember saying that to him. You got to get back to that. You got to get back to arguing policy in the people's house in the state of Texas.
Yep.
Arguing policy and weighing policy on the impact it's going to have to people. Embrace yourself, because our representatives should care about their people. And I think this is what's great. The great moral tragedy of our time is that we have a president of the United States who doesn't give two fucks about the American people. He doesn't care about America. His disdain for America is palpable. He is a corrupt son of a bitch who has spent 50 years in office. What?
Nothing to show.
Milking off
Yeah.
the country. Someone please tell me, where are the goods and services that he provided that justify the tens and tens of millions that he enjoys right now?
That's what they're worried about.
This is truly sick. And I'm sorry, we got to get back. The Declaration of Independence says that governments are instituted among men and that they derive the just powers from the consent of the governed. You can't look at Joe Biden and bitch endlessly without looking in the mirror. I'm sorry, you can't. And hopefully this show, our time together, is a time for just, I mean, we're rough on Biden as we should. We're rough on Hunter Biden. Department of Justice, lawfare, the grotesque injustices we see about the country, the pursuit of fake problems while blowing off real ones. We spend our time on that sidebar, but we also come back and we try to look at ourselves, because as Jesus said, that really, I'm paraphrasing, I could take the Sermon on the Mount and paraphrase it to this: the solution starts at home. Look in the mirror.
Well,
Right?
this is why Jordan Peterson has got so much tracking. He says, clean up your room. Look at yourself.
I love
these are
that.
all biblical. But
Yeah,
these are
I love
biblical.
it.
Look, and look, Jordan doesn't say it's not. He advocates, and he's done more good for
That is
people
true.
seeking biblical knowledge than many churches, unfortunately.
Did you see the name of the tour he's starting next
No.
year? It starts in January. It's called "He Who Wrestled with God." That's his new tour. Anyway, it's gonna be interesting.
Well, let's see. Let's see what he.
It's coming to Austin.
I wonder if. I wonder if he's wrestled and he's come to a conclusion. He's
Which God?
Well, no, the only God.
Yeah.
But these are conversations we need to have. We need to have these conversations. But people need to be prepared for them, and they're not in the church, out of the church. I mean, that's why I'm fascinated when I listen and I watch some of these podcasts, and even on Value Entertainment on Patrick Bet-David. I get a really good apologist. The bishop on there, I want to see. I'm sure. I don't know how deep they got into. They had George Stanko on with him.
right
Like,
on next
I didn't even know who the guy was. So I saw that clip. I said, "Who's this little kind of fast talking dude that's like American Solo there, or just talking away?" But he seemed to be. He had good knowledge of scripture. And then I found out that he used to be on the Paul Logan show.
Oh, you don't know the whole?
No, I don't know all that shit. I didn't realize it,
bro.
And then they got sideways from what I saw.
That's gossip right there. I'll tell you later.
Okay,
But
well,
it's
tell me
amazing.
later. But they got sideways because I guess he was on the show with him.
Yep.
And he's so. But those are the platforms. Get me on with Paul Logan. Get me on with Joe Rogan. Get me on with Bill Maher. Get me on with Patrick Bet-David. I'd love to have these conversations because my struggle, my journey, as we've talked about many times on the show, I think is relevant because I asked all the questions. I hear these questions and these conversations like, oh, you're leaving something on the table. So we need more people to be able to navigate through biblical ideas in a practical way, in a real and raw way, right? Where we have R-rated Christianity, but lead us to redeeming ourselves back to the architect of life, which makes societies better. Whether you're a Christian or not, I think if you look at a society based off biblical principles, a society based off atheistic ideology, I mean, the verdict's in over the history of mankind. The verdict's in. We have more than one trial on those issues, and we know that someone that at least would adhere and follow, maybe not accept it for their salvation, but follow biblical principles, society is in more order. And Lady Justice does less work. But all that to say, we're 35 minutes in. Saulo has to go do some type of knitting class. Dom, you done? Anything else? Any comments we got to address?
No.
There it is. Even as we're closing, there it is.
Yeah. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you for anything, Saulo.
No, I was just saying. Next time, George, you need to help me trust the polls because the same way that I feel that Vivek is doing amazing, and his polls don't show it, I think
he's gonna win.
Biden is doing so bad, and I still think that the polls don't show how bad it really is.
But the polls are showing how bad Biden is in an unprecedented way. I mean,
I understand, but I think it's not enough. The same thing with Vivek, because I think he's doing amazing, and it's not enough. Right?
I know, but if people listen to Vivek during the last debate, then Nikki Haley's numbers would have gone down if they actually listened to what he said, but they didn't go down.
They didn't go down. And her face should have made her. Her face meaning she didn't have anything to say.
She had
was like
nothing
this.
to
She looked
say.
embarrassed. She's normally a very aggressive and actually
I
a
used
good
to like
debater.
her a lot. I was like, but she was with, I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
Boring.
I'll see you next week.
She's lost some stock. All right, guys, have a blessed week. And please, Merry Christmas.
Yes,
And
Merry
Happy
Christmas
New Year,
indeed.
even though we have one more weekend before we can say it again before the actual Christmas. But Merry Christmas. Have a blessed week.